Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Paula here. This is my first video ever. I've honestly been thinking about making a YouTube channel for a long time and I'm deciding this is the year. So this is my monthly wrap-up, except it's for the first 2 months of this year, so January and February, and all of the books that I read throughout these months. I think it was a great start of the year and I really like some of the books that I read. I would even say that I found one of my favorite books of the year already, which is quite surprising honestly, but yeah, let's talk about them. So the first book that I read this year is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. I think I've had this for over 2 years already in my bookshelf, and I had some friends that were also gonna read it, so we just read it together. And honestly, it was very cute. Lonely Castle in the Mirror follows Kokoro, which is a middle grade student, I believe, that refuses to go back to school because of reasons that we don't know at the beginning of this book. But one day, while she's at home during school time, her mirror starts glowing, and she just looking at it, she just falls into it and ends up in this place. And in this castle, she meets a girl with a wolf mask. This girl with the wolf mask tells her that along with 6 other kids, they have to find a secret room and a secret key in this castle, and they will be granted a wish. So it follows the adventures of those 7 kids and how they become friends and how they approach this treasure hunt for the wish. I do have to say it is very slow paced. Like, it got me a very long time to get into. I would like read a couple pages and then stop and then not read it again for a couple days. Things start picking up though in like the last third of this book, and it was great. Honestly, it tagged to a lot of my feelings. It was so beautiful, it was also very sad, and there were some plot twists that I did not expect. The main one I did. The main one, I think it was very easy to figure out like how everything was happening, but then I think in the last, like very last chapter, there's a little last plot twist, and that what had me shook. I was so surprised, and it did make me cry a little bit, just like a little bit. So yeah, I'm very excited that I finally got to read this book, and I really liked it. I think I gave it a 4 stars out of 5. Yeah, so that's Lonely Castle in the Mirror. Now, the second book that I read was The 7 Years Sleep by Ashley Buston. I was very curious to get into this book because I heard a lot of praise for it, but last year I read her other book, The Dead Romantics, and I thought it was alright. It was a very cute, fast read, but I didn't really get much out of it. I think I read like a 3.5 or so. But this one was good. This book follows Clementine months after she has lost a very important person in her life, and she moves into that person's apartment. But one day she finds out that there's some random guy in her apartment, but that guy is 7 years for the past, so there's some like magical realism element to this book. It was very cute. I do have to say, if you're not very into insta love, you might not like this as much, but what I got from this book more than the romance was just the depiction of grief and how Clementine was dealing with losing such an important person in her life. And this book is everything about timing. The main thing that I got from this book is that timing is everything. And I feel like this book found me in a time where I really needed it. Well, I was dealing with my own grief, and it was very comforting. So because of that, I did give it a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason I didn't give it a 5 was because I was not that into romance. It was cute, but the rest of the book is what made me like it so much. Now, after I read The 7 Years Sleep, I also buddy read The Naturals, the first book of the Natural series. I read it in my Kindle. I feel like after such an emotional book or emotional experience that I had with The 7 Years Sleep, I just wanted something fun, something that I wouldn't know destroy me that much. So I read The Naturals, and that book was very fun. I have to say, I know everyone compares it to Criminal Minds for young adult, but it reminded me a little bit more of Scorpion. I was obsessed with that show, and I felt like the little qualities that every character in the book has relate more to like the Scorpion team, the Scorpion characters. So I thought that was very fun. So yeah, I think I gave this book a 3.75. I liked it. I didn't love it, but it was very, very fun. And I think I finished it in like one day. And after that, I read the whole series. I read the second, the third one, and the fourth. I don't remember the names, but I'll put them here probably. So yeah, I read the whole series and then I read the novella 12. But yeah, the experience was great. I thought it was very, very fun, which is mostly what I wanted. I think I would give overall the series a 4. I do have to say I probably liked the third one and fourth more just because they started dealing towards this like cultish type of plot, so it was very, very fun. Those are the 6 books and novella that I read in January. Now in February I read what I think will be one of my favorite books from this year, and that is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I'm so excited I got the 11th grade version because it's just beautiful, and the fact that I love this book so much and now have a special edition is just so special for me. So yeah, that's very exciting. So this book follows our character Opal living in a town that she really doesn't like, that honestly doesn't like her either, but it's supposed to be her home. She has this brother that she is trying to take care of, so she accepts a job at Starling House, which is the local haunted house, you could say. She accepts this job from the Starling House owner, which is Arthur Starling. Basically it's about her working in the house and discovering the mysteries that follow her. This book just went in so deep into the history of this house and the history of its people, and it had such a fairy-like, dream-like vibe to it that I loved so much. And the relationship between Opal and Arthur, which is so cute. I really, really like this book and I swallowed it completely. I think I read it in 2 days, and it also has illustrations inside. They are so beautiful, and these are not just especially for the special editions. Like the actual book has like illustrations. So yeah, this is one of my most prized possessions right now. After that, I read Heart of Stone by Johannes T. Evans, which I believe is an indie published book. This story follows a vampire and his assistant, and it's basically the love story between them both. And I thought it was very, very cute, but it was incredibly slow. So slow. Like, slow burn in the next level. It was just so very slow. There was absolutely no plot, just the romance. The romance was the plot. And we didn't really get to see much of the individual lives. It was just their stolen moments together. But it was so slow. It was like them just knowing each other and us getting to know the characters. But I usually prefer when love stories have some kind of plot moving forward, or at least we know more about their individual lives and we get to follow them individually. So I think that's why I didn't enjoy it as much as I hoped. I did enjoy the romance. It was very cute, but I was hoping I got something more from the story. I do have to say the representation was great. One of the main characters has ADHD and the other one is autistic. So those are not storylines that I'm used to reading, and I really appreciated them. I just wish we had gotten more of them individually, as I said. I feel like my issue with this book has been that one specific thing. I gave it a 3.5. It was cute, but it just wasn't that interesting altogether. I had to push myself a little bit to read it. Now, I think this is definitely the weirdest story, the weirdest book I've read this year, obviously. But I think it might be the weirdest book I've ever read, period. And that is Panza de Burro by Andrea Abreu. Now, this book is obviously in Spanish, but it also has an English translation, which is, I think, Dogs of Summer. The cover is very pretty. It's kind of sad to say, but I discovered this book through an English-speaking channel. So I first encountered the English translation and then discovered that the author was Spanish. And I'm not gonna read a book that's written in my native language in a translated language, so I got the Spanish version, which the colors are not nearly as pretty, but this edition is very fun still. It's still a very cool version of it. But yeah, this was weird. It was very, very weird. This is kind of the coming of age story of our narrator and her lucky obsession with her best friend Isora. This is based in the Canary Islands, which is a different part of where I live with a different accent, which is very, very interesting because when I read this, I didn't really have expectations on it, but when I started reading it, I realized that it is written in the accent of the region, which is very, very weird because I think there's always this like stigma of having to write everything in very proper Spanish or very proper English, and only added how our accents change the way we speak in dialogue. But this whole book was written in that accent, so it felt like it was being narrated to me, which was very, very cool. And I remember reading like English brands that obviously we pronounce differently because we don't have the accent. They were not written how the brands are like usually written, how they're spelled properly. They were spelled how we would pronounce them. So I just thought that was very, very cool. I've never read a book like that, and I just thought that it was such a clever way to explain and to put setting into this book. But moving to the contents of it, it was just weird. The whole obsession that she had with her best friend, which, okay, that was not that weird, but how it was described and the things that happened in it. I read it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I still don't know what to say about it. I don't think I can give it a rating because it's so weird, but I feel like it is such a good book to read, especially if you're Spanish and you never really encounter those accents written in paper like I did. I am from the south of Spain, so I obviously have an accent, and it's just very sad how that accent is portrayed in books because it's portrayed as not proper, and it's usually only shown in dialogue just to show where someone is from or to show some kind of like being less than of other characters. So reading the whole book with that accent was just, it was beautiful, and I really, really liked it. But it was too weird, so I cannot put an actual rating to it. After Panza de Burro, I read In These Hallowed Halls, which is a dark academia anthology. It's edited by Mary O'Regan and Paul Kane, and obviously it's just different authors writing short stories. I think I only knew 2 of the authors before going into this book, which were Olivia Blake and Emma Rio. I have only read 1 book by Olivia Blake and I didn't really enjoy it, which was Masters of Death. And then from Emma Rio, I did read If We Were Villains and I really, really liked it. I didn't have many expectations coming in to this book, but I quite enjoyed it. I think Olivia Blake's story in here was very, very fun. It was more of sci-fi dark academia little short story. But yeah, some of them were really fun and some of them were kind of forgettable. So I think overall I gave it a 3.5 just because of that. Yeah, I don't have much to say about it. It was entertaining enough. After In These Hallowed Halls, I read La Sombra del Viento by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, which also has an English translation, and that's The Shadow of the Wind. This was very, very beautiful. This is one of my dad's favorite books. This is actually his copy. This book basically follows the life of our protagonist, which is Daniel. And this starts off with Daniel's father taking him when he's very young to this little like secret library called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. There he chooses 1 book to protect and to keep with him, but he finds out that the author is a very mysterious figure. He doesn't know anything about him, no one knows anything about him, and apparently someone has been trying to get rid of his novels for a long time. I was not very sure what this book was about before I started reading it. I thought it was gonna be just some historical novel about the aftermath of the Civil War, which it kind of is, but it's also about Daniel and this mysterious figure of the author that he really wants to meet. And it just, there's so many mysteries intertwined with each other. You never know what's going on. You never know where the plot is taking you. You don't even know what has happened before. At the very end, where everything is kind of explained and where all of the dots start connecting, it's amazing. The plot twists, I did see some of them, but there were a couple that I was just like, huh? It was very wild. There are characters here that I love. There are characters here that I hated. I hated them so much. But I care for all of the characters in this book, and it was just such a beautiful portrayal of love, of friendship especially, and just the descriptions about books and libraries and just forgotten literature. It was just beautiful, and I really liked it, and I think I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. If anything, it was just a bit too slow-paced for me. Now, talking about slow-paced, I finally finished, after 2 months, January and February, I finally finished The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. It took me 2 months, and I finished it the very last day of February. This book is 1200 pages. I feel like we all know the story of The Count of Monte Cristo, but if you don't, it's basically a story about this young man who had his life in front of him. He was so very happy, and then someone accuses him of something he didn't do, and he is wrongfully taken to prison. And it's the story about he gets out of there and how he swears to revenge on everyone that put him there. I liked it. I was liking it so much at the beginning. I feel like, so this is the story. This part had me so hooked. It was like the beginning, how everything was taking place, how he was taken to the prison, and then his time in the prison. That one was amazing. I read past it so quickly. And then around here, this was like him being out of prison, and so many years have passed by, and we get different perspective and different stories, and I was just so confused because I didn't know what was going on. Why was this important for the story? Why all these characters appeared out of nowhere? I was very, very confused. So this part was the hard part. It was so hard to get through. This is the part that I tried to read for 2 months. And then here, the very last of it, it was so satisfying. It was so satisfying to see how this man had thought of everything, how he had accounted for everything, and seeing how his enemies were just dropping like flies. It was great. It was amazing. I really liked that, but I feel so sad because I really wanted to like this book, and I did at some parts, but it was just too slow. It was just too slow at some of the, like especially the middle part. It was just so very slow, and I just wanted to finish it. I didn't want to look at it. I had no urge to pick it up, and I have to force myself to read it. So because of that, I'm gonna give it a 3.75. If it had been faster, it would probably have a higher rating, but because of that middle part that I just couldn't get through, it ended up being a 3.75. But I do agree that the writing was beautiful. I really loved the writing. I loved the Count. He was amazing. I loved him so much throughout his whole journey, from being just young innocent soul to being just so corrupted by his vengeance. It was great. The end was so incredibly satisfying, but it did not overshadow how much of this I had to push myself through. So, and then the last book that I read in February, which was literally the very last evening of the month, so February 29th in the evening, that's where I read it. I just needed something fluffy. I just need something enjoyable and very easy to read after The Count of Monte Cristo. So I read The Fake Boyfriend Fiasco by Talia Hibbert, and I love Talia Hibbert. She's one of my favorite romance authors. I read her Brown Sisters trilogy, and I also read her YA adult that came out last year, I believe. Highly Suspicious and Fairly Cute, I believe. That one was also great. So I knew that I couldn't go wrong with her. So I read The Fake Boyfriend Fiasco, and it was cute. It did exactly what I needed. It took my mind off of The Count of Monte Cristo. It was a great, fluffy, romantic time. The story itself was alright. I do believe it was very insta-lovey, which at the moment, I just enjoyed that. I wanted that. I did not want anything hard, anything difficult, anything too emotional. So it did what it had to do, and I think I gave it like a 3.5, because again, I did not take much from it, but I just needed something to pass the time and to just go back to my happy, fluffy self and not have to worry about 1200 page books. Those are all of the books that I read between January and February of this year. I found really good books out of the bunch, so I'm very happy with how these 2 months went reading wise. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. This is the first out of hopefully many more videos that I will make in YouTube, so if you would like to subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.